Hello there, and welcome to Deep Sleep Seas. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe you've had a long day, or perhaps you're simply the kind of person who finds comfort in drifting off to the quiet mysteries of the ocean rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey into the underwater world is crafted just for you. You have nothing to do but rest. Let your breathing slow, your muscles soften, and your thoughts settle like sand drifting down through clear water. Tonight we're exploring one of the ocean's most fascinating and misunderstood creatures. We're diving into the world of crabs. These sideways walking wonders have been scuttling across ocean floors, sandy beaches, and rocky shores for hundreds of millions of years. Beneath their armored shells lie secrets of survival, intelligence, cooperation, and adaptation that might just surprise you. From the tiniest pea crab measuring less than half an inch across to the enormous Japanese spider crab with legs spanning 12 feet, from the depths of hydrothermal vents to tropical beaches covered in migrating millions, crabs inhabit nearly every aquatic environment on Earth. We'll journey through shallow tide pools and plunge into the darkest ocean trenches. We'll witness one of nature's most spectacular migrations and discover how these ancient creatures communicate, cooperate, and even solve problems. You'll hear about crabs that wear disguises, crabs that farm bacteria, crabs that form chains to exchange shells, and crabs with teeth in their stomachs. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or at the very least give you something gentle and curious to contemplate as sleep approaches. And just before we begin, if these calm, ocean-centered explorations help you unwind or give you a peaceful way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing to Deep Sleep Seas. It helps others discover these tranquil journeys too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now let your mind drift like a crab carried by a gentle current. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel yourself sinking softly into your bed, as if the mattress were warm sand on a quiet beach. And let's begin our journey into the fascinating world of crabs. Crabs are among Earth's most ancient mariners. They have been walking the ocean floor since long before humans existed, since long before the continents took their current shapes. The story of crabs reaches back through an almost incomprehensible expanse of geological time, back to when the world looked utterly different from the one we know today. Scientists have discovered fossilized remains of crab ancestors that lived over 445 million years ago. These ancient precursors scuttled across primordial seafloors during a time called the Ordovician period, when life was just beginning to explore the possibilities of hard shells and jointed legs. But the crabs we would recognize today, the true crabs of the order Brachyura, evolved much more recently in geological terms, appearing around 150 million years ago during the Jurassic period. Think about that for a moment. 150 million years ago, the Jurassic period. Crabs emerged during the age of dinosaurs, while massive Brachiosaurus browsed treetops and Allosaurus hunted across ancient plains. Crabs were already perfecting their sideways scuttle along coastal waters. They witnessed the rise of the most famous dinosaurs that ever walked the planet. They were there when Tyrannosaurus rex first appeared in the late Cretaceous, and when a catastrophic asteroid struck the Earth 66 million years ago, wiping out the dinosaurs and 75% of all species on the planet, crabs survived. They endured that mass extinction event and continued evolving, diversifying, spreading into countless ecological niches, while the world above was being reshaped. While mammals were just beginning their long rise to dominance, crabs continued their patient existence beneath the waves. They've survived 5 major mass extinction events in Earth's history, 5 apocalypses that reshaped life on this planet, and through each one, crabs persisted. Recent discoveries continue to illuminate this ancient lineage. In 2025, paleontologists announced the discovery of a remarkable fossil called Misura fentoni, found in Canada's Burgess Shale. This creature lived 506 million years ago, making it one of the earliest known ancestors of modern arthropods, the group that includes crabs. Preserved in exquisite detail, the fossil revealed bizarre characteristics: 3 eyes, a body lined with gills, and an open circulatory system. Misura was roughly the size of a human finger, but within its strange anatomy lay the blueprint that would eventually give rise to the thousands of crab species we know today. The evolution of crabs represents a fascinating phenomenon called carcinization, the tendency of certain crustacean groups to independently evolve into crab-like forms. Multiple times throughout evolutionary history, different lineages of crustaceans have converged on the same basic body plan: a broad, flattened shell, a short abdomen tucked underneath, and legs positioned for that characteristic sideways walk. It's as if nature keeps returning to this design because it works so remarkably well. Today, scientists recognize over 7,000 species of true crabs, with hundreds more species of crab-like creatures that aren't technically true crabs, but have evolved similar forms. This includes king crabs, hermit crabs, and porcelain crabs, all of which developed their crab-like appearance independently through the process of carcinization. The diversity is staggering. There are crabs that live in the deepest ocean trenches and crabs that climb trees. There are crabs barely visible to the naked eye and crabs larger than a grown man. There are crabs that never leave the ocean and crabs that spend most of their lives on land, returning to the sea only to breed. This incredible diversity stems from millions of years of adaptation to different environments, different food sources, different predators, and different opportunities. Each species represents a unique solution to the challenges of survival. And yet, despite their differences, all crabs share that ancient heritage, that unbroken lineage stretching back through the mists of deep time. When you see a crab scuttling along a beach or hiding beneath a rock in a tide pool, you're looking at a living connection to Earth's distant past. You're seeing a creature whose basic design has been tested and refined through countless generations, through ice ages and warm periods, through continental drift and ocean level changes, through asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions. Crabs have seen it all, survived it all, and continue to thrive in the modern ocean. Their success speaks to something fundamental about their design, something about the way they're built and the way they live that has allowed them to persist while so many other creatures have vanished forever. In the quiet darkness of the ocean floor, in the gentle sway of kelp forests, in the warm shallows of tropical lagoons, crabs continue their ancient routines, largely unchanged from their ancestors millions of years ago. They are living fossils in the truest sense, carrying forward a legacy that predates our species by an almost inconceivable span of time. And tonight, as you rest, you can take comfort in that continuity. The ocean is still full of crabs, still full of these ancient wanderers who have outlasted empires and species and entire epochs. They remind us that life persists, that adaptation works, that the patient and resilient inherit the earth, or in their case inherit the ocean floor, where they'll likely continue their sideways dance for millions of years to come. If you've ever held a crab shell, you've held a marvel of natural engineering. The crab's body is a masterpiece of protective design, a mobile fortress that allows these creatures to thrive in environments that would quickly destroy a soft-bodied animal. Understanding how a crab is built helps us appreciate just how remarkable these creatures truly are. The most obvious feature of any crab is its hard outer covering, the exoskeleton. Unlike humans and other vertebrates who wear their skeletons on the inside, crabs and other arthropods wear theirs on the outside. This external armor is made primarily of chitin, a tough, flexible material, similar to the substance that makes up insect wings and butterfly scales. The chitin is often reinforced with calcium carbonate, especially in marine species, creating a shell that can withstand tremendous pressure and protect against predators. This exoskeleton serves multiple purposes. Its armor, certainly, protecting the soft tissues within from teeth, claws, and crushing forces. But it's also structure, providing attachment points for muscles and maintaining the crab's shape against the pressures of water and gravity. The exoskeleton is waterproof, preventing dehydration in air or excessive water absorption in the ocean. It's a sensory surface covered with tiny hairs and receptors that detect touch, chemicals, and vibrations in the water. The main part of a crab's body is called the carapace, the broad shield that covers the cephalothorax where the vital organs are housed. The cephalothorax is a fusion of what in other animals would be separate head and chest regions. Beneath this protective dome beat the crab's heart, a simple but efficient organ that pumps blood throughout the body. This blood is quite different from ours. In many crabs, particularly those living in cold, deep waters, the blood contains hemocyanin instead of hemoglobin. While our hemoglobin uses iron to carry oxygen and gives our blood its red color, hemocyanin uses copper, giving some crabs blue blood. The horseshoe crab, though not a true crab but a distant relative more closely aligned with spiders and scorpions, has blood so blue and so valuable for medical purposes that it's worth thousands of dollars per gallon. This blood contains a substance that coagulates when exposed to bacterial toxins, making it invaluable for testing the sterility of medical equipment and vaccines. Every person who has received an injection or had surgery has benefited indirectly from horseshoe crab blood. Attached to the cephalothorax are the crab's appendages, and here the design becomes truly fascinating. Crabs are decapods, meaning they have 10 legs. The front pair has evolved into chelipeds, the claws that crabs use for feeding, fighting, and signaling. These claws can be remarkably powerful. The coconut crab, the largest land-dwelling arthropod, has claws capable of exerting crushing force comparable to the bite of a lion. Other crabs have more delicate claws, perfectly adapted for picking through sand or plucking tiny organisms from the water. The remaining 4 pairs of legs are used for walking, though in some species the back pair has evolved into paddle-like swimming appendages. The legs are marvels of mechanical engineering, with multiple joints that allow for complex movements. Each leg is covered in sensory hairs that detect currents, chemicals, and vibrations. Through these legs, crabs feel the texture of the seafloor, detect the approach of predators, and find their way through their environment. Many crabs have eyes mounted on stalks that can swivel independently, giving them an extremely wide field of view. While crab vision isn't particularly sharp by our standards, it's excellent at detecting movement, which is what matters most for spotting approaching predators or potential prey. The eyes contain thousands of tiny lenses, creating a mosaic image of the world. Some crabs can even see polarized light and ultraviolet wavelengths invisible to human eyes. Beneath the carapace, crabs have gills for breathing. These delicate, feathery structures extract oxygen from water, much as our lungs extract oxygen from air. The gills are tucked into a protective chamber within the crab's body, and water flows over them constantly. Some land-dwelling crabs have modified their gill chambers to function almost like primitive lungs, allowing them to breathe air as long as the gills remain moist. This adaptation has allowed certain crab species to colonize terrestrial environments, spending most of their lives on land and returning to water only to breed. The abdomen of a crab is small and tucked underneath the body, quite different from the long, prominent tail of a lobster or crayfish. In true crabs, this abdomen is folded tightly beneath the carapace, creating a more compact, streamlined body. This reduction of the abdomen is one of the defining characteristics that separates true crabs from their crab-like relatives. In females, the abdomen is broader to accommodate eggs, which are carried attached to small appendages called pleopods in a protected space beneath the tail. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of crab anatomy is not what they have, but what they can regrow. Crabs possess an extraordinary ability called autotomy and regeneration. If a crab loses a leg or claw, whether to a predator's attack or while fighting with another crab, the lost appendage can be deliberately severed at a special breaking point that minimizes blood loss. Then, over the course of several molts, the crab will regrow the missing part. This regeneration is not instantaneous. It takes time, usually about a year for a fully grown crab, and the replacement limb starts smaller than the original, growing larger with each successive molt. But the fact that it happens at all is remarkable. Imagine if humans could regrow lost arms or legs. For crabs, this is simply a part of life, a built-in insurance policy against the dangers of their environment. This brings us to molting, one of the most dramatic and vulnerable moments in a crab's life. Because the exoskeleton is rigid and doesn't grow, crabs must periodically shed it entirely to increase in size. The process is called ecdysis, and it's both fascinating and perilous. As a crab prepares to molt, it begins growing a new soft exoskeleton beneath the old one. The crab reabsorbs some of the minerals from the old shell, recycling them for the new one. When the time is right, the old exoskeleton splits open along predetermined weak points, usually along the back edge of the carapace. The crab then performs an act of remarkable flexibility, extracting itself entirely from its old shell. It pulls out every leg, every antenna, every eye stalk, even the lining of its stomach and gills comes away with the old shell. What emerges is a soft, vulnerable creature, often about 30% larger than the shell it just abandoned. For the next few hours, or even days, depending on the species and size, the crab's new exoskeleton remains soft. During this time, the crab is extremely vulnerable to predators. It cannot defend itself effectively. It cannot eat. It can barely move. It hides in a secure location, taking up water to expand its new shell to full size before the shell hardens through mineralization. Young crabs molt frequently, perhaps every few weeks as they grow rapidly. Adult crabs molt less often, perhaps once a year or once every few years. Some very large, old crabs may stop molting altogether. Each molt is a risky time, and some crabs die during the process, trapped within their old shell or too weak to complete the extraction. But molting isn't just about growth. It's also a time of renewal and repair. Scars disappear. Damaged appendages are replaced. Parasites attached to the old shell are shed. A crab emerges from its molt refreshed, ready to face the ocean once more in its new armor. This cycle of protection and renewal, this balance between the security of armor and the necessity of growth, defines much of a crab's existence. They are creatures perpetually managing the trade-off between safety and development, between hiding and venturing forth, between the rigid shell that protects them and the soft vulnerability that allows them to grow. As you lie there in the darkness, imagine the slow, patient process of a crab growing its new shell. Imagine that quiet transformation happening in a rocky crevice beneath the sea. There's something deeply calming about envisioning that natural cycle, that ancient rhythm of growth and renewal that has continued unchanged for countless millions of years. Rest in that continuity, that patient unfolding of life beneath the waves. If there's one thing everyone knows about crabs, it's that they walk sideways. This curious mode of locomotion has become synonymous with these creatures, so much so that we describe any indirect or evasive approach to a problem as crabwise. But have you ever wondered why crabs move this way? The answer reveals elegant engineering and evolutionary ingenuity. The sideways walk isn't actually unique to crabs, but they've certainly perfected it. The reason lies in the architecture of their legs and the way these legs attach to their body. A crab's legs are hinged in such a way that they bend most easily from side to side rather than forward and backward. The joints, particularly the crucial ones near where the legs attach to the body, have a range of motion that favors lateral movement. Think of it this way: trying to make a crab walk forward would be like asking you to walk with your knees locked and your legs swinging only from the hips. It's possible, but it's awkward and inefficient. For a crab, moving sideways is simply the path of least resistance, the direction that allows the smoothest, fastest, most energy-efficient travel. And fast they can be. Ghost crabs, those pale creatures that emerge from burrows on sandy beaches, can reach speeds of 10 miles per hour when running sideways. That's about the speed of a small child running or a chicken sprinting across a yard. For an animal only a few inches across, it's remarkably quick. This speed serves them well, allowing them to dash from burrow to water and back, evading the seabirds that hunt them from above. But here's something that might surprise you. Not all crabs walk sideways, and even those that typically do can sometimes walk forward. The claim that crabs can only walk sideways is one of those comfortable myths that doesn't quite align with reality. Many species can and do walk forward when the situation calls for it. It's just less efficient for them, so they default to sideways movement. The Japanese spider crab, holder of the record for largest living crab species with a leg span that can exceed 12 feet, tends to walk forward more than its smaller cousins. Its incredibly long, spindly legs give it a range of motion that allows for forward movement, and in the deep waters where it lives, efficient forward travel serves it better than sideways scuttling. Similarly, some swimming crabs have evolved to move forward when swimming. The Atlantic blue crab, whose scientific name Calanecte sapidus translates to beautiful savory swimmer, has rear legs modified into paddle-like appendages. When it swims, it moves forward with remarkable grace, those paddle legs propelling it through the water like oars. There are even crabs that have taken sideways movement to its logical extreme and can swim sideways. The motion is fluid, almost dance-like, as they sweep through the water with surprising agility. Watching a crab swim is to see sideways locomotion transformed into something almost beautiful, a rhythmic pulsing that carries the crab through three-dimensional space. Some crabs have adopted even more creative methods of getting around. The Columbus crab, for instance, is famous for hitchhiking. Rather than walking or swimming on their own, these crabs cling to floating debris, drifting across vast stretches of ocean on logs, seaweed, or even trash. They've been found riding on the backs of sea turtles, traveling thousands of miles as passive passengers, while feeding on the algae and small organisms growing on their host shell. And then there are the truly surprising adaptations. Mangrove tree crabs have learned to climb. These remarkable creatures spend much of their time in the tangled roots and branches of mangrove trees, well above the waterline. They've adapted their claws and legs for gripping bark and navigating the three-dimensional maze of the mangrove forest. When threatened, they can drop from branches into the water below, a fall that would injure or kill many other creatures, but which these specialized crabs handle with ease. The fiddler crabs, inhabitants of mudflats and sandy beaches around the world, have perfected the art of the vertical as well as the horizontal. They dig burrows that can extend several feet down into the sand or mud, complex tunnel systems with multiple chambers and even drainage channels to prevent flooding. Moving through these burrows requires forward and backward movement, and fiddler crabs handle it all with practiced ease. What makes the sideways walk so effective for most crabs is that it allows them to move quickly while keeping their powerful claws facing forward, ready to defend or attack. A crab running sideways can still face its opponent or prey. It can keep its eyes on a threat while making a rapid escape in a different direction. This ability to move in one direction while facing another provides a significant survival advantage. The mechanics of the sideways walk also help crabs maintain stability. With 8 legs in contact with the ground at most times, a crab moving sideways creates a wide, stable base. This is particularly important in environments with currents, waves, or uneven surfaces. A crab on a rocky shore, being buffeted by waves, remains remarkably stable because of its wide stance and low center of gravity. In the ocean's depths, where many crabs spend their lives on soft sediment, that sideways walk distributes their weight broadly, preventing them from sinking into the mud. It's like walking on snowshoes rather than boots, spreading the load across a larger area. Deep-sea crabs often have particularly wide, flat bodies that further enhance this weight distribution, allowing them to walk atop sediments that would swallow a narrower creature. Some researchers believe the sideways walk may have evolved partly as an anti-predator adaptation. A crab moving sideways presents a broader profile, making it harder for certain predators to grab. The motion itself can be confusing to predators accustomed to chasing prey that runs directly away. And the ability to change direction instantly without turning around gives crabs an edge in the eternal game of chase and escape. There's also evidence that crabs can learn to optimize their movement patterns. In experiments, crabs placed in mazes or novel environments explore their surroundings and gradually develop more efficient routes. They remember where they've been and adjust their behavior accordingly. This suggests that the sideways walk isn't just a mechanical necessity, but part of a flexible behavioral repertoire that crabs can adapt to different situations. Young crabs, in their larval stages drifting as plankton in the ocean currents, don't walk sideways at all. They swim freely in 3 dimensions, powered by tiny appendages that beat rhythmically. It's only after they metamorphose into their adult form and settle to the seafloor that the sideways walk begins. This transition, from 3-dimensional swimming to 2-dimensional walking, represents a fundamental shift in how the crab interacts with its world. As you relax tonight, imagine that sideways motion. Picture a crab moving across the ocean floor in that distinctive scuttle, legs coordinating in precise rhythm, body held low and stable, claws raised and ready. There's something almost hypnotic about it, that lateral drift, that sidelong approach to life. Maybe there's a lesson there, a reminder that sometimes the indirect path, the sideways approach, is actually the most efficient way forward. Let that thought carry you gently towards sleep, moving sideways through consciousness toward the realm of dreams. The deep ocean is Earth's largest habitat, yet it remains one of the least explored. Down in those dark waters where sunlight never reaches and pressure would crush any submarine, not specifically designed to withstand it, life persists in forms strange and wonderful. And among the residents of the abyss are crabs, species that have adapted to conditions so extreme they seem almost alien. Deep-sea crabs face challenges that shallow water species never encounter. Pressure increases by 1 atmosphere for every 33 feet of depth, meaning a crab living at 10,000 feet deep experiences over 300 times the pressure we feel at sea level. The water is permanently cold, typically just above freezing, No plants can grow without sunlight, so the deep ocean floor is mostly barren sediment, an underwater desert fed only by the steady rain of organic matter drifting down from the sunlit waters far above. These dead animals, fecal pellets, and fragments of organic material falling from surface waters form what scientists call marine snow. It drifts down through the dark water like actual snow falling from a sky, and it's the primary food source for most deep-sea animals. For crabs living in these depths, survival means making the most of whatever meager resources drift within reach. Many deep-sea crabs have evolved to be scavengers, equipped with keen chemical senses that can detect the smell of carrion from remarkable distances. When something dies and sinks toward the seafloor, whether it's a fish or a whale or anything in between, chemical signals spread through the water like ripples in a pond. Deep-sea crabs pick up these signals and converge on the food source, sometimes traveling considerable distances across the barren plain. The golden deep-sea crab, found along the east coast of the United States at depths of several thousand feet, can grow quite large compared to its shallow water relatives. It has a carapace over 6 inches wide, and scientists theorize that this large size helps with scavenging. A bigger body means a larger stomach to take advantage of sporadic food availability, and longer legs mean greater mobility to search vast areas of seafloor for the next meal. This phenomenon of deep-sea creatures growing unusually large is called abyssal gigantism, and while crabs don't grow as enormous as some other deep-sea animals, many deep-sea crab species are noticeably larger than related shallow water forms. The mechanisms behind this gigantism aren't fully understood, but they likely relate to several factors. The cold water temperatures, which slow metabolism and can lead to longer lifespans. The need for large bodies to survive long periods without food, and possibly reduced predation pressure in the deep sea. Some deep-sea crabs have lost their eyes entirely. In the absolute darkness miles below the surface, vision is useless, and maintaining eyes costs energy that could be better spent elsewhere. These blind crabs navigate by touch, by chemical sense, and possibly by detecting minute electrical fields generated by the muscles of other animals. Their antennae become their primary sense organs, feeling through the darkness, testing the water for chemical cues, reaching out to explore their surroundings. Other deep-sea crabs have developed different visual adaptations. Some have enormous eyes, sensitive to the faintest glimmers of bioluminescence that many deep-sea creatures produce. In parts of the deep ocean, this bioluminescence is the only light, living creatures generating their own glow through chemical reactions. A crab with enlarged eyes might spot the telltale flash of bioluminescent prey, or see the warning glow of a predator, gaining precious seconds to hide or flee. The red deep-sea crab, which lives at depths between 900 and 3,600 feet along the continental slope, shows interesting patterns of depth segregation by sex. Female crabs tend to stay in shallower water, while males venture into deeper zones. Females are smaller, with carapaces around 4.5 inches wide, while males can grow to over 7 inches. The females migrate upslope to breed, moving into somewhat warmer, more food-rich waters where their eggs have a better chance of survival. But perhaps the most remarkable deep-sea crabs are those living at hydrothermal vents, cracks in the ocean floor where superheated water rich in minerals gushes up from Earth's interior. These vents create oases of life in the deep sea, powered not by sunlight but by chemosynthesis, bacteria that harness the energy in volcanic chemicals to fuel their growth. The keyword Tyleri, affectionately known as the Hoff crab after actor David Hasselhoff due to its hairy chest, lives at hydrothermal vents near Antarctica. These crabs cluster around the vent chimneys in astonishing densities, over 600 individuals per square meter, more crowded than rush hour in a major city. The water emerging from the vents exceeds 660 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead, yet the crabs live right next to these thermal plumes. The Hoff crab's hairy chest isn't just for show. Those bristles, called setae, harbor colonies of bacteria that the crab appears to farm. The bacteria grow on the setae, feeding on the chemicals in the vent water, and the crab periodically scrapes them off and eats them. It's a form of agriculture, perhaps one of the most extreme forms on Earth, and it allows these crabs to thrive in an environment that would kill most other animals instantly. Other hydrothermal vent crabs have similar adaptations. They live in a narrow zone where the water is hot but not lethally so, where chemicals are abundant but not toxic, where life can gain a precarious foothold on the edge of an underwater volcano. These vents are scattered across the ocean floor, often hundreds of miles apart, yet vent crab species have found their way to these isolated islands of warmth and productivity. Scientists are still discovering new species of deep-sea crabs regularly. In 2018, an expedition to the waters off Java, Indonesia, brought up over a dozen new species of crabs from depths exceeding 4,000 feet. Among them were 3 new species of spider crabs, including one nicknamed Big Ears for the distinctive plate protecting its blood-red eyes. Another species, bright orange and covered with strong spines, clings to deep-sea stalked crinoids, animals that look like plants but are actually relatives of starfish. These discoveries hint at how much we still don't know about the deep ocean. Every expedition brings back strange new creatures, new adaptations, new ways of surviving in the crushing dark. And among those discoveries are always crabs, members of one of the most successful groups of animals on Earth, having colonized every depth from tide pools to the deepest trenches. The deepest living crabs inhabit the Hadal zone, depths below 20,000 feet where the pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres. The Mariana Trench, the deepest place in Earth's oceans at nearly 36,000 feet, contains specialized crabs feeding on the organic matter that reaches even these extreme depths. They live in near-total darkness under pressure that would instantly crush most organisms, yet they thrive, adapted perfectly to their extreme environment. These Hadal crabs are often small and delicate-looking, quite different from the robust crabs of shallow water. Their shells are thinner, perhaps because the extreme pressure from outside actually helps support their bodies, reducing the need for heavy armor. They move slowly in the cold water, conserving energy in an environment where every calorie counts. Some deep-sea crabs show remarkable longevity. In the slow metabolism of the cold depths, where food is scarce and growth is gradual, crabs may live for decades. Some species might reach 50 years or more, though studying the lifespan of deep-sea creatures is challenging. These ancient crabs, crawling across the abyssal plain in the eternal darkness, might have been alive when the world above was very different, when humans were just beginning to explore the shallow oceans, completely unaware of the vibrant, strange world existing in the depths below. As you drift towards sleep tonight, imagine those deep-sea crabs in their cold, dark world. Picture them moving slowly across fields of soft sediment, their antennae sweeping through the water, searching for the chemical trace of food. Imagine the vents, glowing faintly with heat, surrounded by their clustered communities of hairy crabs. There's a quiet peace in those depths, a stillness and permanence that the surface world never knows. Let that deep ocean calm flow through you, settling your thoughts, slowing your breathing, drawing you down into the peaceful darkness of sleep. For a long time, people assumed crabs were simple creatures, driven purely by instinct, incapable of learning or complex behavior. Recent research has thoroughly overturned that assumption. Crabs are far more intelligent than we once believed, capable of learning, remembering, communicating, and even possibly feeling emotions. The world of crab cognition is proving to be surprisingly sophisticated. Let's start with the basics. Can crabs learn? The answer is an unequivocal yes. Crabs can learn from experience, both positive and negative. They can remember locations, recognize individuals, and adjust their behavior based on what they've learned. This isn't some barely perceptible conditioning, but genuine learning that shapes how crabs interact with their world. Shore crabs can learn to navigate mazes. In laboratory experiments, crabs placed in simple mazes with food rewards at the end gradually improve their performance over multiple trials. They make fewer wrong turns, reach the goal more quickly, and remember the correct path even after delays of several days. This demonstrates both spatial learning and memory, cognitive abilities we usually associate with much more complex animals. Hermit crabs show even more sophisticated learning. These charismatic creatures, which occupy empty snail shells for protection, must regularly find new shells as they grow. They're remarkably picky about their choice of home. A hermit crab will carefully examine a potential shell, testing its weight, measuring its opening, checking its interior with their specialized rear legs. If the shell isn't quite right, they'll reject it and keep searching. This assessment process requires holding a mental template of what constitutes a good shell and comparing each candidate against that template. More remarkably, Hermit crabs learn from watching other crabs. In experiments, crabs that observed other hermit crabs being attacked at specific locations subsequently avoided those locations themselves, even though they had never personally experienced danger there. This is observational learning, also called social learning, and it demonstrates that crabs pay attention to what happens to their neighbors and adjust their own behavior accordingly. Crabs also remember and recognize individuals. In studies of hermit crab interactions, researchers found that crabs remember specific opponents from previous fights. If a crab has lost a fight to a particular individual, it will often avoid that individual in future encounters, recognizing them and remembering the past defeat. This ability to recognize individuals and remember past interactions suggests a level of cognitive sophistication that exceeds simple stimulus-response behavior. Fiddler crabs, those small crabs with one enormously enlarged claw, demonstrate complex communication and social behavior. Male fiddler crabs wave their enlarged claws in species-specific patterns to attract females. Each wave is a precisely timed performance, and females are choosy, watching multiple males before selecting a mate. The males that wave most vigorously, most persistently, and with the most precisely coordinated rhythm tend to win female attention. But the waving is just the beginning. When a female approaches, the male switches to a different form of communication, drumming. He rapidly strikes his claw against the ground or the edge of his burrow, creating vibrational signals that travel through the substrate. These drumming signals convey additional information about the male's quality. The speed, rhythm, and duration of drumming correlate with the male's physical condition and the quality of his burrow. This is multimodal communication, using both visual and vibrational channels to send complex messages. The fact that fiddler crabs integrate information from multiple sensory sources to make mate choice decisions speaks to considerable cognitive complexity. They're not just responding to the brightest or loudest signal, they're weighing multiple factors and making choices based on nuanced assessments. Ghost crabs have their own unique communication method. They produce sounds using teeth located in their stomachs. These gastric teeth, called the gastric mill, normally grind up food. But ghost crabs have learned to use them as sound generators, grinding the teeth together to produce growling noises during aggressive encounters. It's supposedly the first known instance of an animal using stomach sounds as a form of communication, and it's effective. The growls deter rivals and warn predators, conveying information through sound in an environment where visual signals might not work. Many crab species communicate through chemical signals called pheromones. Female crabs release pheromones when they're ready to mate, chemical messages that drift through the water and attract males from considerable distances. Males can detect these infinitesimal concentrations of chemicals, following the trail to its source with remarkable precision. This chemical communication is sophisticated, conveying not just the presence of a female but her species, her reproductive status, and even her quality as a potential mate. Crabs also use pheromones for territorial marking and individual recognition. They can distinguish between the chemical signatures of different individuals, recognizing neighbors versus strangers, winners versus losers from previous fights. This chemical communication happens constantly, invisibly, an entire language of scent flowing through the water that crabs read as easily as we read words on a page. Physical displays augment these chemical and acoustic signals. Crabs wave their claws, raise their bodies up on their legs to appear larger, open and close their claws in threatening gestures, and engage in ritualized pushing contests. These displays usually settle disputes without actual fighting, allowing crabs to assess each other's strength and resolve without the risk of injury. It's a form of communication that conveys information, strength, size, willingness to escalate, and allows both parties to make informed decisions about whether to fight or retreat. Perhaps most surprisingly, crabs may be capable of experiencing pain and possibly even emotion-like states. This has been a subject of considerable scientific debate, but evidence is accumulating that crabs and other crustaceans have nociceptors, nerve cells that respond to potentially damaging stimuli, and that they exhibit behavioral changes consistent with pain experience. In experiments, crabs given mild electric shocks avoid locations where they received shocks, even giving up preferred shelter sites to avoid shock-associated areas. They groom and guard injured areas. They show physiological stress responses. These aren't just reflex reactions but coordinated behavioral changes that suggest genuine pain experience. A 2021 review by the London School of Economics found strong evidence that crabs are sentient beings capable of experiencing pain and distress. This has implications for how we treat crabs, both in research and in commercial fisheries. But it also reveals something profound about the nature of intelligence and consciousness. We're discovering that minds can be very different from ours, built on entirely different nervous systems with far fewer neurons, yet still capable of learning, memory, communication, and perhaps even feeling. Research on crab cognition is ongoing, and each study seems to reveal new layers of complexity. Crabs use landmarks to navigate, following familiar routes through their environment. They time their activities to tidal cycles and lunar phases with remarkable precision. They coordinate their behavior with other crabs, sometimes cooperating to find food or defend territory. They adapt their foraging strategies based on predation risk, being more cautious in dangerous areas and more bold where threats are minimal. Hermit crabs demonstrate perhaps the most complex social behavior in one of nature's most elegant systems, the vacancy chain. When a hermit crab finds a shell that's too large for it, it doesn't abandon the find. Instead, it waits by the shell. Other hermit crabs, attracted by chemical signals or visual cues, arrive to inspect the shell. If it's also too large for them, they wait too, forming a line organized by size, from largest to smallest. They often physically attach to each other, creating a chain of crabs all waiting for the right-sized individual to arrive. When a crab that perfectly fits the oversized shell finally shows up and claims it, a cascade of shell exchanges occurs in rapid sequence. The largest waiting crab takes the newly vacated shell, the second largest takes the shell that crab just left, and so on down the line. Within minutes, every crab in the chain has upgraded its housing. This remarkably coordinated behavior benefits everyone involved, a rare example of synchronized cooperation that requires each crab to assess not just its own needs but to wait patiently for a system-wide solution. This behavior hints at something deeper, a level of social intelligence and restraint that we wouldn't expect from creatures with such tiny brains. Hermit crabs have nervous systems containing perhaps a few 100,000 neurons, compared to the 86 billion neurons in a human brain. Yet with that limited neural hardware, they accomplish tasks requiring assessment, memory, patience, and coordination. It's a reminder that intelligence comes in many forms, that consciousness and cognitive ability are distributed across the tree of life in surprising ways. As you lie in the darkness tonight, consider these intelligent crabs. Think about the fiddler crab at the edge of his burrow, drumming his claw in a precise rhythm that has evolved over countless generations. Picture the hermit crabs forming their patient chain, waiting in the darkness for the moment when everyone will benefit. Imagine the deep-sea crab detecting the faint chemical trace of distant food, calculating whether the energy cost of traveling to it will be worth the reward. These creatures are thinking, in their own way, solving problems, making decisions, living examined lives beneath the waves. Let that thought comfort you. Intelligence and awareness are woven through the ocean, present even in creatures so different from us. One of the most spectacular natural events on Earth involves crabs. Every year on Christmas Island, a remote Australian territory in the Indian Ocean, an extraordinary phenomenon unfolds. Millions upon millions of red crabs emerge from the island's forests and march toward the sea in one of the largest animal migrations on the planet. It's a sight so remarkable that Sir David Attenborough ranked it among his greatest television moments, a living red carpet that transforms the entire landscape. Christmas Island is home to an estimated 40 to 100 million red crabs, depending on the count and the year. These aren't small creatures. Adult red crabs have carapaces up to 5 inches across, and their brilliant red coloration makes them unmistakable. For most of the year, they're nocturnal and reclusive, living in burrows in the island's rainforest, venturing out mainly at night or during rain to feed on fallen leaves, fruits, flowers, and the occasional protein source. But when the wet season arrives, typically in October or November, everything changes. The first heavy rains trigger a remarkable transformation. Red crabs across the entire island, synchronized by internal clocks attuned to lunar cycles and triggered by moisture, leave their burrows and begin marching toward the coast. They move with purpose and determination, flowing like a crimson river through the forest. down roads, across streams, over rocks, unstoppable in their drive to reach the ocean. Male crabs lead the first wave, setting out several days before the females. The journey takes 5 to 7 days for most crabs, a challenging trek that can cover several miles of rough terrain. The crabs are vulnerable during this time, exposed to the sun's heat and the risk of dehydration. They must periodically rest in shade, and they'll detour to any available water to replenish moisture. When they reach the coast, the males dip into the ocean to rehydrate, then retreat to the lower terraces above the beach to dig burrows. These burrows become mating chambers. The males defend their small territories aggressively, fighting off rivals with raised claws and threatening postures. Given the millions of crabs all arriving at roughly the same time, the density can be extraordinary, over 100 crabs per square meter on some beaches. The air fills with the sound of claws clicking, crabs rustling through leaf litter, and the surf breaking on the rocks below. The females arrive a few days after the males, and mating occurs in or near the burrows. After mating, the males leave, making the return journey to the forest. But the females remain for approximately 2 weeks, staying in their burrows while their eggs develop in an abdominal brood pouch. During this time, each female crab is carrying thousands of developing eggs, up to 100,000 in some cases, all carefully tended and protected beneath her tucked tail. The timing of egg release is precisely choreographed with the lunar cycle. Red crabs spawn before dawn during the last quarter of the moon, at the turn of a high tide. The specific timing ensures the eggs are released when tidal conditions are optimal for larval survival. The lunar phase determines when spawning occurs, and the crabs somehow know, weeks in advance, exactly when they need to leave their forest burrows to arrive at the coast on time. When the moment arrives, the females move to the water's edge. They stand at the boundary between land and sea, and in a coordinated surge, millions of female crabs release their eggs into the waves. The eggs hatch the instant they touch seawater, and clouds of microscopic larvae swirl in the surf. The sheer number of larvae turns the shallows into a dark, turbulent soup, the water thick with billions upon billions of baby crabs in their first moments of life. These larvae are swept out to sea by the receding tide and the waves. They spend the next month as plankton, drifting in ocean currents, developing through several larvae stages. During this time, they're completely unlike adult crabs, more resembling tiny shrimp. They feed on microscopic organisms, and in turn serve as food for countless predators. Fish, manta rays and whale sharks converge on Christmas Island during the crab spawning season specifically to feed on the larval bounty. Vast numbers of larvae are consumed, an annual feast that draws marine megafauna from across the Indian Ocean. The few larvae that survive gradually transform into megalopae, a transitional stage between larva and juvenile. These megalopae settle near the shore, about 4 weeks after hatching, gathering in rock pools and shallow waters. After a day or two, they undergo their final metamorphosis, emerging as tiny but fully formed crabs about the size of a pencil eraser, measuring roughly 1/5 of an inch across. These miniature crabs then face perhaps the most dangerous part of their lives, the return journey to the forest. They emerge from the water en masse, thousands upon thousands of them, and begin marching inland. The journey takes about 9 days, and mortality is extremely high. Birds feast on them. Crabs walk across hot pavement. Many simply don't have the strength to complete the trek. But enough survive to sustain the population. Once or twice a decade, conditions are particularly favorable, and a huge number of baby crabs make it to the safety of the forest. These boom years replenish the population, offsetting the lean years when few or no crabs survive to adulthood. It's a strategy that works, a numbers game played out across millions of individuals. The returning baby crabs spend their first 3 years hidden in the forest, sheltering in rock crevices, under logs, in leaf litter, anywhere that offers protection from predators. They grow slowly, molting frequently, gradually increasing in size. At around 4 to 5 years of age, they reach sexual maturity and join the migration for the first time, becoming part of that crimson tide flowing toward the sea. For the human residents of Christmas Island, the migration is both a spectacle and a challenge. Roads close to allow crabs to pass safely. Temporary barriers and underpasses guide crabs under major thoroughfares. The island has even built special crab bridges, elevated structures that allow crabs to cross roads without risk. During peak migration, driving is hazardous. Crabs cover the roads in such numbers that it's nearly impossible to avoid them, and their hard shells can puncture tires. Residents take it in stride, many embracing the migration as part of island life. They rake crabs out of driveways, blow baby crabs across roads with leaf blowers, and plan their schedules around the tidal wave of red crustaceans that overtakes the island each year. For tourists, it's a bucket list experience, a chance to witness one of nature's most extraordinary phenomena. The migration attracts visitors from around the world, people coming specifically to see the red crabs. The best viewing spots are at beaches like Drumsite, Flying Fish Cove, Ethel Beach and Greta Beach, where the spawning occurs. Watching millions of female crabs standing at the water's edge, raising their claws skyward and shaking their eggs into the surf, is an experience that defies description. The scale is overwhelming, the coordination astonishing, the sheer abundance of life humbling. The Christmas Island red crab migration reminds us that we share this planet with creatures whose lives unfold according to rhythms very different from our own. These crabs respond to ancient cues, the phases of the moon and the arrival of rain, following imperatives programmed into them over countless generations. They've been making this journey for thousands of years, long before humans ever set foot on Christmas Island. Sadly, the migration faces threats. The introduction of yellow crazy ants to Christmas Island has killed millions of red crabs over the past few decades. These invasive ants spray formic acid when threatened, and they swarm crabs, killing them through sheer numbers and acid burns. Conservation efforts, including the introduction of tiny wasps that parasitize the ants, have helped control the ant population and allowed the crab numbers to rebound. But the threat remains, a reminder of how fragile even the most spectacular natural phenomena can be. Climate change poses another concern. The migration timing depends on rainfall patterns, which are shifting as global temperatures rise. If the rains come too late or are too sparse, crabs may not be able to complete their migration. If rainfall patterns become too unpredictable, the synchrony that makes the mass migration possible could break down. Scientists are monitoring these changes closely, hoping to understand and mitigate the impacts before they become critical. For now, though, the migration continues, a river of red flowing through the forest every year, one of Earth's great natural spectacles, persisting despite the challenges of the modern world. As you rest tonight, imagine those millions of crabs moving with single-minded purpose toward the sea. Picture the females standing in the surf at dawn, releasing their eggs into the waves. Envision the tiny baby crabs emerging from the water weeks later, beginning their long march toward the forest and adulthood. It's a story of cycles and seasons, of life renewing itself in vast numbers, of connections between land and sea, of ancient patterns continuing into an uncertain future. Let that image of flowing red, of purposeful movement toward a goal written in instinct and lunar pull, carry you gently into the rhythms of sleep. The diversity of crab species is staggering, not just in number, but in form and size. Crabs have evolved into an astonishing variety of shapes and sizes, each adapted to its particular ecological niche. From the tiniest to the largest, from the most delicate to the most robust, crabs demonstrate the remarkable plasticity of the crustacean body plan. At the smallest extreme is the pea crab, a creature so tiny it lives inside the shells of oysters, mussels, and other bivalves. Pea crabs measure between about 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch across, small enough that you could hold several on a fingertip. Female pea crabs spend their entire adult lives inside their host shell, feeding on particles filtered from the water by the host. Males are even smaller and remain free swimming, visiting females inside their host shells to mate. Despite their size, pea crabs are true crabs with all the standard crab features in miniature. They have a full set of legs, claws, eyes, and all the internal organs necessary for crab life. They're simply scaled down to fit their unique lifestyle. Finding a pea crab in an oyster when eating at a restaurant is considered good luck by some, though it can be a surprise to discover another creature living inside your meal. At the opposite end of the spectrum is the Japanese spider crab, the largest arthropod on Earth. These giants have leg spans that can exceed 12 feet from claw to claw, and individuals weighing over 40 pounds have been recorded. Standing next to a fully extended Japanese spider crab is like being confronted by a living alien, something that seems too large to be real. Despite their imposing size, Japanese spider crabs are gentle creatures. They live on the deep ocean floor off the coast of Japan, at depths between 200 and 2,000 feet. Their enormously long, spindly legs allow them to walk across soft sediment without sinking in, distributing their weight like snowshoes. They move slowly and deliberately, feeding on dead animals that sink to the seafloor, occasionally supplementing their diet with algae and small living animals. Japanese spider crabs can live for over 100 years, growing slowly throughout their lives. They're examples of deep-sea gigantism, the tendency for deep-sea species to grow unusually large. The cold temperatures and high pressure of their environment, combined with longevity and slow metabolism, allows them to reach sizes impossible for shallow water relatives. On land, the coconut crab holds the title of largest terrestrial arthropod. These massive hermit crab relatives can weigh over 9 pounds and have leg spans exceeding 3 feet. Unlike most hermit crabs, adult coconut crabs don't occupy shells. They've developed a hardened abdomen that provides protection without needing borrowed armor. Coconut crabs are famous for their ability to climb trees and for their incredibly powerful claws, which can crack coconuts, their namesake food source. The force their claws can generate rivals the bite strength of many large mammals. They're found on islands across the Indian and Pacific Oceans, often living well inland from the coast, returning to the water only to release their larvae. Between these extremes exist thousands of species, each with its own unique characteristics. The decorator crabs are masters of camouflage, attaching pieces of sponge, algae, and other organisms to their shells, creating living camouflage that helps them blend into their surroundings. They carefully select and place these decorations, showing a surprising degree of aesthetic sense. Some species will even transfer their decorations to their new shell when they molt, like someone moving artwork when changing apartments. Blue crabs are prized for their meat and their beautiful coloration. Their scientific name, Calinectes sapidus, means beautiful savory swimmer, and both parts are accurate. Their blue and green carapaces and bright blue claws are stunning, and their taste has made them a valuable commercial species. They're aggressive and feisty, willing to stand their ground against much larger threats, claws raised in defiance. Snow crabs live in the cold waters of the Arctic and North Atlantic, forming enormous populations on the seafloor. Commercial fishing for snow crabs is a major industry in Alaska and Canada, though the population has declined in recent years, possibly due to warming waters. These crabs can live in water just above freezing, their bodies adapted with antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming in their tissues. King crabs, despite their name and crab-like appearance, are actually more closely related to hermit crabs. They're another example of carcinization, the evolutionary process of becoming crab-like. King crabs have one less pair of visible walking legs than true crabs, with the fifth pair reduced and tucked inside the gill chamber. They're among the largest and most valuable commercial crab species, with some individuals weighing over 20 pounds. Hermit crabs are beloved for their shell-dwelling lifestyle and often kept as pets. They come in many species, from tiny creatures living in periwinkle shells to larger species occupying conch shells. Their soft, asymmetric abdomens curl perfectly to fit inside spiral shells, and as they grow, they must find progressively larger shells. The search for the perfect shell is a constant preoccupation, and hermit crabs will try on multiple shells, testing each carefully before making a decision. Fiddler crabs are notable for their extreme sexual dimorphism. Males have one enormously enlarged claw, sometimes larger than the rest of their body, while females have two normally sized claws. The large claw serves multiple purposes, attracting mates through waving displays, fighting rivals, and signaling across mudflats. The asymmetry means males are somewhat handicapped in feeding, able to use only one small claw to manipulate food. Ghost crabs are pale, almost translucent creatures that blend perfectly with sandy beaches. They're incredibly fast, capable of those 10-mile-per-hour sprints mentioned earlier. They dig deep burrows in beach sand, sometimes extending several feet down, and emerge at night to hunt for small animals and scavenge along the tide line. During the day, they plug their burrows and wait out the heat underground. Mangrove crabs live among the tangled roots of mangrove forests, habitats that bridge the boundary between land and sea. Some species spend most of their time above water, breathing air and climbing through the roots like arboreal mammals climbing trees. They've adapted to life in these unique ecosystems, able to survive in water that ranges from fresh to hypersaline, in temperatures that vary dramatically with the tides. Land crabs represent multiple independent colonizations of terrestrial habitats. Various crab lineages have evolved the ability to live on land, returning to water only to release larvae. They've developed modified gills that function like primitive lungs, able to extract oxygen from air as long as the gills remain moist. Some land crabs can drown if submerged too long, a strange reversal from their marine ancestors. Vampire crabs are small, colorful crabs from Southeast Asia that have become popular in the aquarium trade. They're true land crabs, living in leaf litter and only occasionally entering water. Their dramatic coloration, often deep purple or orange with bright red eyes, makes them visually striking. They're also unusual among crabs in that they provide parental care, with females carrying their young through development rather than releasing larvae into the water. Porcelain crabs aren't true crabs at all, but are related to hermit crabs and squat lobsters. They're small, flat crabs that live under rocks in the intertidal zone. Despite their delicate appearance, they're tough little creatures, able to withstand the pounding surf of wave-swept shores. When threatened, they can shed legs easily, distracting predators while they escape. The shed legs will regenerate over subsequent molts. Sally Lightfoot crabs are among the most colorful, with carapaces of red, orange, and yellow, sometimes with brilliant blue or green highlights. They live on rocky shores throughout the tropical Pacific, where they feed on algae and scavenge. They're incredibly agile, able to cling to vertical rock faces, and even leap from rock to rock with their powerful legs. Each of these species, and the thousands of others, represents a unique solution to the challenge of survival. Each has its own behaviors, its own adaptations, its own place in the web of ocean life. Together they demonstrate the incredible evolutionary potential of the crab body plan, the ways a fundamental design can be modified and refined to exploit every possible ecological opportunity. As you settle into sleep tonight, think about this diversity. Imagine the tiny pea crab nestled in an oyster shell and the massive spider crab stalking across the deep sea floor, both perfectly adapted to their worlds. Picture the colorful Sally Lightfoots clinging to wave-swept rocks and the pale ghost crabs sprinting across moonlit beaches. Each species is a thread in the vast tapestry of ocean life, each one playing its part in the eternal cycles of the sea. Let that rich diversity, that profusion of forms and lives, fill your mind as you drift toward dreams. In the ocean, being eaten is a constant concern. Most crabs are prey for something, whether it's fish, octopuses, seabirds, sea otters, or larger crabs. This pressure has driven the evolution of remarkable defensive strategies, from simple armor to sophisticated camouflage to chemical weapons and behavioral tricks. Crabs are masters of both hiding and fighting, and their strategies for staying alive are endlessly creative. The most obvious defense is the exoskeleton itself. That hard shell provides significant protection against many predators. Most fish can't crack a crab shell easily, and the shell protects against the scraping, crushing forces of the ocean environment. Crabs tuck into crevices where their armor protects them from all sides, making them difficult to extract and consume. But armor alone isn't always enough, so many crabs have evolved additional defenses. Camouflage is perhaps the most widespread. Many crabs are colored to match their environment. Brown crabs blend with rocky seafloors. Green crabs disappear among eelgrass and kelp. Sandy-colored crabs vanish against beach sand. This cryptic coloration makes crabs difficult to spot even when they're in plain sight. Some crabs take camouflage to remarkable extremes. Decorator crabs actively camouflage themselves by attaching bits of their environment to their shells. They pluck pieces of sponge, algae, bryozoans, and even small anemones from their surroundings and attach them to specialized hooked hairs on their carapace. The result is a crab that looks like a mobile piece of reef or seafloor, covered with living organisms that grow and change over time. Decorator crabs are surprisingly particular about their decorations. They select specific colors and textures that match their environment. If moved to a different habitat, they'll remove old decorations and replace them with new ones that match the new surroundings. When they molt, they carefully transfer their decorations from the old shell to the new one, demonstrating planning and aesthetic judgment that suggests sophisticated cognitive processes. Deep-sea spider crabs use a similar strategy, covering themselves with sponges and sediment. Some species that live near hydrothermal vents don't bother with visual camouflage, since it's perpetually dark at those depths. Instead, they cover themselves with mud and debris, possibly to protect against predators that hunt by chemical detection or to insulate themselves from temperature extremes near the vents. Sponge crabs represent a unique variation on camouflage. These crabs hold pieces of sponge over their backs, gripping them with specially modified rear legs. The sponge acts as both camouflage and chemical defense. Many sponges contain toxic compounds that deter predators, and the crab gains protection by association. Some sponge crabs have such consistent relationships with particular sponge species that the sponge grows to fit the crab's shape, eventually forming a perfect living shield. Other crabs use mimicry rather than camouflage. Some species of spider crabs associate with jellyfish or Portuguese man-of-war, clinging to the tentacles with their sharp-tipped legs. The venomous tentacles protect the crab from predators, and in return, the crab may feed on organisms attached to the jellyfish or even on the jellyfish's tissues. It's a risky strategy, living among venomous tentacles, but the protection it provides is valuable. Box crabs, when threatened, can fold their legs and claws tightly against their bodies, creating an almost completely sealed box. Their carapace extends over their legs, and their claws fit precisely into notches that close off any gaps. In this defensive posture, a box crab becomes a hard sphere with no vulnerable points, effectively immune to most predators. Some crabs practice the natosis, or playing dead. When threatened, they become completely still, legs tucked in, making no movement whatsoever. Many predators are triggered to attack by movement. An emotionless crab may be overlooked or abandoned as uninteresting prey. Once the threat passes, the crab resumes activity as if nothing happened. Crab claws themselves are formidable weapons. The chelops, the front pair of legs modified into claws, can deliver painful pinches and, in larger species, crushing blows. The claws are strong enough to break through shells, cut through seagrass, and inflict serious damage on predators. When cornered, most crabs will raise their claws in a threat display, opening them wide to appear larger and more formidable. This threat display is often ritualized. The crab may stand up on its legs to increase its height, turn to face the threat, raise its claws high, and open and close them in a threatening manner. This display often deters predators without requiring actual combat. If the predator persists, the crab will strike with its claws, attempting to pinch and injure. Some crabs have asymmetric claws specialized for different functions. Fiddler crabs, with their one enormous claw, use that large claw primarily for display and fighting other males. The small claw is used for feeding. Other species have one crusher claw with broad molar-like surfaces for cracking shells and one pincher claw with sharp blade-like edges for cutting. This specialization allows the crab to handle a wide variety of foods and threats. Behavioral defenses are equally important. Many crabs are nocturnal, avoiding daytime predators by staying hidden during daylight and emerging only at night. Others synchronize their activity with tides, being active during high tide when they're submerged and protected, then burying themselves or hiding during low tide exposure. Crabs also use cooperative defense. Some species live in groups, with multiple individuals sharing a territory. When a predator approaches, these crabs will coordinate their defense, all raising their claws together, creating a wall of threatening pinchers that's more daunting than any single crab could present. There's some evidence that crabs can communicate about threats, warning each other of danger through chemical signals or physical movements. Burrowing is another crucial defense. Many crab species dig burrows that provide refuge from predators, shelter from environmental extremes, and safe places to molt. These burrows can be simple holes or elaborate tunnel systems with multiple chambers and exits. Fiddler crabs are famous for their complex burrows, some extending 3 feet or more into the mud, with side chambers and drainage systems. When threatened, a burrowing crab will retreat into its burrow, often blocking the entrance with its claws. In this position, the crab is nearly invulnerable. The predator faces the hardest part of the crab, the claws and front of the carapace, and the narrow tunnel prevents the predator from getting a good grip or applying force effectively. Some crabs have evolved relationships with other animals that provide mutual defense. Boxer crabs carry small sea anemones in their claws, wielding them like weapons. The anemones have stinging cells that deter predators, and the crab waves them at any threat. In return, the anemones benefit from the crab's mobility, being carried to food sources they couldn't reach otherwise. Other crabs live commensally with larger, more dangerous animals. Certain small crabs live among the spines of sea urchins, gaining protection from the urchin's sharp spines and possibly toxic secretions. Coral crabs live within branching corals, protected by the coral's stinging polyps. These relationships are usually species-specific, evolved over long periods into tight ecological partnerships. Chemical defense is less common in crabs than in some other marine animals, but it exists. Some crabs have glands that produce noxious or irritating secretions, while not as dramatically toxic as, say, a pufferfish or cone snail. These chemicals can make a crab unpalatable or irritating to handle, providing enough deterrence to avoid being eaten. The ability to shed limbs, autotomy, is itself a defense mechanism. When grabbed by a predator, a crab can deliberately sever a leg or claw at a predetermined breaking point, escaping while the predator is left holding the severed appendage. The lost limb continues to move for some time, distracting the predator while the crab flees. Though losing a limb is costly, it's better than being eaten, and the crab will eventually regenerate the lost part. All these defensive strategies work together, layered defenses that give crabs a fighting chance in a dangerous ocean. A crab might use camouflage as its first defense, staying hidden and unnoticed. If spotted, it might freeze, playing dead. If the predator persists, the crab might retreat to a burrow or crevice. If cornered, it will raise its claws and fight. And if grabbed, it might sacrifice a limb to escape. This layered approach to defense, combined with the basic protection of the exoskeleton, allows crabs to survive in environments teeming with predators. As your mind quiets tonight, picture a crab settling into a crevice, pulling pieces of algae over itself until it's invisible against the rock. Imagine the decorator crab carefully selecting just the right piece of sponge, attaching it precisely to complete its disguise. Think of the boxer crab waving its anemone pompons at a curious fish, the threat display warning the fish away. There's something peaceful in these images of hiding and protecting, of creatures finding safety in cleverness and adaptation. Let those defensive strategies, those patient methods of surviving, lull you into your own safe space of sleep. Reproduction in crabs is a complex affair, shaped by the challenges of life in water and the need to ensure the next generation survives in a hostile ocean. From elaborate courtship rituals to the release of thousands of eggs into the currents, from the drifting larval stages to the moment when a young crab first settles to the seafloor, the crab life cycle is a journey of transformation and survival against overwhelming odds. For most crab species, reproduction begins with courtship. Male crabs must attract females and convince them of their quality as mates. This is where those elaborate displays and communications come into play. Fiddler crabs wave their enlarged claws in rhythmic patterns, each species with its own distinctive wave. Ghost crabs drum on the sand outside their burrows, creating vibrations that travel through the substrate. Blue crabs release pheromones into the water, chemical advertisements of their readiness to mate. Female crabs are choosy. They assess multiple males, comparing their displays, their burrow quality, their size, their coloration. A female might visit several males before making her selection, and she may reject a male even after inspecting his burrow. This choosiness drives sexual selection, favoring males with the most impressive displays, the best burrows, and the strongest defenses. Mating itself presents unique challenges. Female crabs can only mate during a brief window after molting, when their shell is still soft. The hard exoskeleton that protects crabs also prevents mating, so reproduction must occur during the vulnerable post-molt period. Males are attuned to chemical signals that indicate when females are preparing to molt, and they often guard these females, chasing away rivals and waiting for the brief opportunity when mating can occur. This guarding behavior, called mate guarding, can last for days. The male carries the female beneath him, protecting her from predators and rivals until she molts. After she molts, mating occurs quickly, and the male continues guarding her until her new shell hardens enough that she can defend herself. This extended protection represents a significant investment by the male, time and energy devoted to ensuring his genes are passed on. After mating, female crabs develop their eggs internally. In most species, the eggs are fertilized inside the female's body and then transferred to the outside, where they attach to specialized appendages called pleopods on the underside of the abdomen. The female carries these eggs, sometimes thousands of them, for weeks or even months, depending on the species and water temperature. During this brooding period, The female cares for the eggs carefully. She aerates them by fanning water over them with her pleopods. She cleans them, removing any fungal or bacterial growth. She may even manipulate them individually, ensuring all are developing properly. This maternal care continues until the eggs are ready to hatch. When the time comes, usually timed with tidal cycles and lunar phases to maximize larval survival, the female releases the larvae into the water. The eggs hatch essentially on contact with seawater, releasing tiny larvae that look nothing like adult crabs. These first-stage larvae, called zoe, are planktonic, drifting with the currents, feeding on microscopic organisms. The zoea stage is perhaps the most vulnerable time in a crab's life. These tiny, almost transparent creatures are prey for countless organisms. Fish, jellyfish, other crustaceans, and even other crabs feed on crab larvae. The mortality rate is staggering, often exceeding 99%. Of the thousands of larvae a female releases, only a handful, if any, will survive to adulthood. The zoe molt several times, growing and changing with each molt. After several zoeal stages, the larvae transform into a different form called megalopae. These megalopa larvae are more crab-like, though still quite different from adults. They're strong swimmers, able to move actively rather than just drifting. This mobility allows them to select appropriate settling sites. The megalopa stage is a critical transition period. The larvae must find suitable habitat, settle to the bottom, and undergo their final metamorphosis into juvenile crabs. This settling process is influenced by multiple cues: the texture of the substrate, the presence of adult crabs, the availability of shelter, and chemical signals from appropriate habitats. Getting this choice right is crucial. Settlement in poor habitat can mean death. Once settled, the megalopa undergoes a final molt, emerging as a tiny crab, perhaps only a few millimeters across. This juvenile crab looks essentially like a miniature adult, with all the features of an adult crab, but much, much smaller. From this point on, the crab will grow through molting, shedding its exoskeleton periodically to increase in size. Young crabs face many dangers. They're prey for fish, birds, octopuses, and larger crabs. They must find food, avoid predators, and locate suitable shelter. Many juvenile crabs spend their early lives in protected nursery habitats, areas with abundant shelter and food. Seagrass beds, oyster reefs, and rocky tide pools often serve as nurseries, providing the resources young crabs need to survive and grow. Growth is slow and incremental. Each molt allows a modest increase in size, perhaps 20 to 30%. Young crabs molt frequently, sometimes every few weeks, but as they grow larger, molting becomes less frequent. Large adult crabs may molt only once a year, or even less often. Sexual maturity is reached when crabs are somewhere between 1 and 5 years old, depending on the species, water temperature, and food availability. At this point, the crabs can reproduce, beginning the cycle anew. But many crabs will continue growing and molting even after reaching maturity, increasing in size throughout their lives. Crab lifespans vary enormously. Small species might live only 2 or 3 years. Larger species can live for decades. Deep-sea crabs, with their slow metabolisms in cold water, may live 50 years or more. The oldest individuals are typically the largest, having survived and grown through many years of challenges. Some crabs show remarkable reproductive strategies. Female crabs can store sperm for extended periods, sometimes a year or more, using it to fertilize multiple batches of eggs from a single mating. This allows them to reproduce successfully, even if they don't encounter suitable mates frequently. Other species show interesting parental care behaviors. Most crabs provide no care beyond brooding the eggs, but some land crabs and freshwater crabs carry their young through the larval stages, keeping them in specialized brood chambers until they're more developed. This increased parental investment reduces the number of offspring but increases the survival rate of each one. The lunar and tidal synchronization of reproduction is another fascinating aspect. Many crab species time their egg release to specific lunar phases and tidal conditions. This synchrony ensures larvae are released when conditions are optimal, perhaps when certain food sources are abundant or when currents will carry larvae to appropriate habitats. The precision of this timing, the way crabs know when the conditions are exactly right, speaks to sophisticated internal clocks and sensitivity to environmental cues. As you rest tonight, think about that vast cycle of life in the ocean. Imagine millions of eggs hatching simultaneously in the surf, clouds of larvae dispersing into the currents. Picture the tiny megalopa larvae selecting their settling sites, the moment when they commit to a location and transform into juvenile crabs. Think of the young crabs hiding in seagrass, growing slowly, molting periodically, surviving against odds that claim most of their siblings. It's a story repeated billions of times in the ocean, a cycle as old as crabs themselves, as reliable as the tides and the phases of the moon. Let that ancient rhythm, that pulse of generations, carry you peacefully into sleep. Crabs play crucial roles in marine and coastal ecosystems, their activities shaping the environment in ways that benefit countless other species. They're not just inhabitants of these ecosystems, but active engineers, creatures whose presence and behavior fundamentally alter their habitats. Understanding these ecological roles helps us appreciate the importance of crabs beyond their direct value as food or interesting animals to observe. One of the most important roles crabs play is as detritivores and scavengers. Many crab species feed on dead organic matter, from fallen leaves on mangrove forests, to dead fish on the seafloor, to algae washed up on beaches. This scavenging accelerates the breakdown of organic material, recycling nutrients back into the ecosystem where they can be used by other organisms. In mangrove forests, land crabs are essential for this nutrient cycling. They climb into trees to feed on leaves, both living and dead. They drag leaf litter into their burrows, where it decomposes, enriching the soil with nutrients. Studies have shown that areas without crabs accumulate far more leaf litter, and this litter decomposes much more slowly. The crabs essentially act as cleanup crews, processing organic material and making its nutrients available to the forest. Burrowing crabs are ecosystem engineers in a more literal sense. Their burrows aerate sediment, allowing oxygen to penetrate deeper into mudflats and mangrove soils. This oxygenation changes the chemistry of the sediment, affecting what microorganisms can survive there and how nutrients are processed. In some ecosystems, crab burrows are so dense that they completely alter the physical and chemical properties of the sediment. Fiddler crabs, those small crabs with the enlarged claws, can occur in extraordinary densities on mudflats, sometimes over 100 burrows per square meter. Each burrow extends down into the mud, creating passages for water and air. During high tide, water flows into and out of these burrows, flushing the sediment with oxygenated seawater. During low tide, air enters the burrows, further oxygenating the mud. This bioturbation, the stirring and mixing of sediment by organisms, has profound effects on the ecosystem. In seagrass beds, crabs help control algae growth. Some species graze directly on algae, preventing it from overgrowing and smothering the seagrass. Others stir up sediment while feeding, resuspending nutrients and organic particles. This activity can benefit seagrass by increasing nutrient availability, though in excess it can harm seagrass by increasing turbidity or smothering plants with sediment. Crabs are also important prey for numerous predators. They're a crucial link in marine food webs, converting energy from algae and detritus into crab biomass that's then consumed by fish, birds, octopuses, sea otters, and many other predators. The abundance of crabs in an ecosystem often directly affects the abundance of their predators. Shorebirds, in particular, depend heavily on crabs in many coastal areas. During migration, shorebirds stop at estuaries and mudflats to refuel, feeding intensively on crabs and other invertebrates to gain the energy reserves needed for the next leg of their journey. The timing of these migrations often coincides with peak crab abundance. A decline in crab populations can have cascading effects on migratory bird populations thousands of miles away. In coral reef ecosystems, crabs contribute to reef health in multiple ways. Some species graze on algae that would otherwise overgrow and kill corals. Others clean corals, removing sediment and debris that could smother coral polyps. Still others prey on coral predators, like certain snails and starfish, helping protect the corals from these threats. Hermit crabs provide an unusual but important service. Their mobile habitat. The shells they occupy become substrates for numerous organisms. Algae, barnacles, and other encrusting organisms grow on hermit crab shells. Small animals shelter among these growths. As the hermit crab moves through its environment, it carries this miniature ecosystem with it, distributing organisms more widely than they could spread on their own. Some crabs have specific symbiotic relationships that affect ecosystem function. The relationship between snapping shrimp and certain gobies is mediated by crabs in some systems. The shrimp dig burrows that the goby fish use as shelter, and in return, the fish stands guard, warning the shrimp of danger. Crabs sometimes take advantage of these burrows as well, creating complex three-way interactions that affect the distribution and behavior of all involved species. In deep-sea ecosystems, crabs serve as some of the primary scavengers. When large animals like whales die and sink to the seafloor, these whale falls create oases of food in the nutrient-poor abyss. Crabs are often among the first scavengers to arrive. Attracted by the chemical signals of decomposition, they feed on the carcass, accelerating its breakdown and dispersing nutrients across the seafloor. At hydrothermal vents, crabs like the Hoff crab support bacterial communities that form the base of the vent food web. The bacteria growing on the crabs' bodies consume chemicals from the vent fluids and in turn are consumed by other vent organisms. These crabs are farming bacteria, cultivating and harvesting them, and in doing so, they concentrate and redistribute the energy and nutrients from the vents. Human impacts on crab populations can ripple through entire ecosystems. Overfishing of crabs can release their prey from predation pressure, sometimes leading to explosions in prey populations that can alter ecosystem structure. Conversely, protecting crabs can have positive effects on ecosystem health as their ecological services continue uninterrupted. The introduction of invasive crab species can be devastating. The green crab, native to Europe, has invaded coastlines around the world. In some areas, these invaders have decimated native clam and mussel populations, altered seagrass beds, and competed with native crabs. The impact of invasive species reminds us how integral crabs are to ecosystem function. When the wrong species arrives, or when native species disappear, the effects cascade throughout the system. Climate change is altering crab ecology in complex ways. Warming waters are pushing some species toward the poles, shifting their ranges northward or southward as they track their preferred temperature ranges. Ocean acidification, the absorption of excess carbon dioxide by seawater, may affect crabs' ability to build and maintain their calcium carbonate shells. Changes in ocean currents could alter larval dispersal, affecting where and when crabs can successfully reproduce. Despite these challenges, many crab populations remain robust, continuing their essential ecological roles. Their abundance, diversity, and the multiple ecosystem services they provide make crabs keystone species in many marine and coastal habitats. Ecosystems function differently without crabs, and in some cases may not function at all. As you lie quietly tonight, think of these small engineers working constantly beneath the waves, in mudflats, on beaches, in mangrove roots. Picture fiddler crabs maintaining their burrows, ghost crabs cleaning beaches of dead organisms, decorator crabs moving slowly across reefs, deep-sea crabs scavenging the abyssal plains. This is the ocean's invisible workforce, the countless small creatures whose collective activities maintain the health and function of marine ecosystems. Let that image of industrious crabs, each one contributing in its small way to the whole, bring you peace as you sink into restful sleep. And so we've reached the end of our journey through the world of crabs. We've traveled from the sunlit shallows to the darkest depths, from beaches covered in migrating millions to the solitary deep-sea vent crab farming bacteria in the darkness. We've discovered that crabs are ancient travelers, survivors of mass extinctions, living fossils carrying the legacy of over 400 million years of evolution. We've seen how they're built, those masterpieces of protective engineering with exoskeletons that must be shed and regrown, with blood that runs blue in some species, with the remarkable ability to regenerate lost limbs. We've learned why they walk sideways, though we've also discovered that many crabs can walk forward, backward, swim, climb trees, and even hitchhike across oceans. We've met the inhabitants of the abyss, those crabs living in conditions that seem impossible, in crushing pressure and perpetual cold and darkness, yet thriving through remarkable adaptations. We've explored their unexpected intelligence, their ability to learn and remember, to communicate through multiple channels, to cooperate in solving problems and exchanging resources. We've witnessed one of nature's most spectacular phenomena, the Christmas Island red crab migration, millions of crabs flowing like a crimson tide from forest to sea and back again. a cycle timed to lunar phases and seasonal rains, a natural wonder that draws observers from around the world. We've marveled at the diversity of crabs, from creatures smaller than a fingernail to giants with leg spans exceeding 12 feet, from the delicate pea crab living inside oyster shells to the powerful coconut crab cracking coconuts on tropical islands. We've admired their defensive strategies, from simple armor to elaborate camouflage to chemical weapons and behavioral tricks. We've followed the crab life cycle from courtship through the release of thousands of eggs, from the vulnerable larval stages drifting in the plankton to the settling of megalopae, and the growth of juveniles through successive molts, and we've understood their importance in marine ecosystems, their roles as scavengers, predators, prey, and ecosystem engineers, creatures whose activities shape the environment and support countless other species. Throughout this journey, we've discovered that crabs are far more than simple sideways walking crustaceans. They're intelligent, adaptable, diverse, and ecologically crucial. They're survivors who've outlasted dinosaurs and adapted to every marine habitat on Earth. They're social creatures with complex communication systems, capable of cooperation and individual recognition. They're living links to Earth's ancient past and vital components of the ocean's present and future. As you rest here in the darkness, you can take comfort in knowing that right now, across all the world's oceans, crabs are going about their ancient business. Somewhere, a mother crab is tending her eggs. A decorator crab is carefully selecting just the right piece of sponge. A hermit crab is trying on a new shell. A deep-sea crab is detecting the chemical trace of distant food. Fiddler crabs are waving their claws in the moonlight. Ghost crabs are sprinting across beaches. And in the deep darkness of hydrothermal vents, Hoff crabs are farming bacteria, living on the edge of the extreme. The ocean is vast beyond imagining, and it's full of wonders. Crabs are just one small part of that vastness, but in studying them, we glimpse the incredible creativity of evolution, the resilience of life, the interconnectedness of ecosystems. We're reminded that intelligence and consciousness come in forms very different from our own, that even creatures with tiny brains can learn and remember and communicate. We're reminded, too, of fragility. Many crab populations face threats from overfishing, habitat destruction, climate change, and invasive species. The Christmas Island red crabs nearly succumbed to yellow crazy ants. Deep-sea crabs may be affected by warming waters and changing currents. The ecosystems crabs help maintain are under pressure from human activities. But there's hope as well. Conservation efforts are helping crab populations rebound. People are learning to coexist with migrating crabs, building bridges and barriers to keep them safe. Marine protected areas give crabs and other ocean life refuge from exploitation. Research is revealing the importance of crabs and the complexity of their behaviors, fostering appreciation and inspiring protection. The ocean's story is still being written, and crabs will be part of that story for a long time to come. They've already proven their ability to persist through the most dramatic changes Earth can throw at them. They've survived asteroid impacts and ice ages, volcanic eruptions and sea level changes. They've adapted to every habitat, from tide pools to trenches, from coral reefs to hydrothermal vents. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, carry with you the image of crabs in their many forms and habitats. Let their ancient persistence comfort you. Let their adaptability inspire you. Let their diversity and ecological importance remind you of the incredible richness of life on this blue planet. The ocean continues its eternal rhythms. Tides rising and falling, currents flowing, waves breaking on shores, and through it all, crabs scuttle and swim and survive, as they have for countless millions of years and will for countless millions more. Sleep well, knowing that the ocean is out there in the darkness, vast and mysterious and full of life. Sleep well, knowing that crabs are out there too, living their lives according to patterns older than memory, following instincts refined through deep time. Let the image of calm waters and gentle currents, of crabs moving peacefully through their world, carry you into restful, restorative sleep. The ocean breathes with the tides, the crabs move with the rhythms of moon and season, and you too can rest in those ancient patterns, those reliable cycles that have continued since long before we were here and will continue long after. Rest now in the knowledge that life persists, that adaptation works, that the ocean endures, and that tomorrow, somewhere in those vast waters, crabs will still be walking sideways, still be surviving, still be thriving in their sideways, beautiful way. Good night.